Welcome to Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now you can learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property. Learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau with the Mineola Law Firm of Shane, Dox, Denisi, and Corker. He's a member of the Committee on Professional Ethics of the Bar Association of Nassau County and counsel to the Nassau Academy of Law. And now, here is your host for Law You Should Know, attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Today we're going to be discussing Lawyers Without Borders. You've probably heard of Doctors Without Borders, so we'll find out all about Lawyers Without Borders. Our guest is Christina Storm, and she is the head of the organization. Christina, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thank you for having me.
Start out by telling us the history and goals of Lawyers Without Borders.
Well, I am also the founder of Lawyers Without Borders, and I founded it some 20 years ago when I was very much interested in changing up my career and spending a little more time giving back and a little less time on the for-profit side. So it was very much a husband and wife decision that my husband would continue as a commercial lawyer and I would pursue full-time pro bono work. Only it was my interest in pro bono were international, and there were very few, if any, opportunities available for someone in my position, which was having been a trial lawyer for 30 or 40 years. So it became quite apparent to me sooner rather than later that there was a desperate need for people like myself who were inclined to give back and had nothing to channel our skills, talents, experience, and time. And I decided that I could exponentially increase my impact by creating such an organization and doing for others what I wanted for myself. That was opportunities to put myself in places where my skills could could be handy, useful, and valuable. So in 2000, I founded Lawyers Without Borders. It took a few years for us to get off the ground and figure out exactly what lawyers could do around the world. It's a little different from doctors, as laws change from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and there are specialties abounding in our profession. But we got the knack of it and figured out how to do that, how to customize programs for lawyers and how to customize lawyers for programs. And in 2005 or 6 was our first assessment. I think 2006 was our first training. And now in 2019, we probably will have trained about 1,000 judges and lawyers this year. And we're on track to do it again next year. Around the world, mostly I would say in the developing world with right now a focus in the Americas and Africa. And we engage with lawyers from private practitioners to lawyers with a criminal background to partners and associates and trainees in big law. And we find ways to put them to work for free for the betterment of mankind.
And tell us about some of the profile, if you will, some of the attorneys who've been involved.
So my goal was to be a Catholic with a small c in our approach, and that was to make sure that we created opportunities for every kind of lawyer out there. We have a two-pronged mission. One prong of our mission is to grow the culture of pro bono, and part of that meant finding ways to involve a broader spectrum of lawyers from different areas and different types of practices. And the flip side of our mission was to take those lawyers and put them into rule of law positions around the world, serving the underserved. So we have solo practitioners from country law practices with a very unique niche specialty. Criminal lawyers, trial lawyers, transactional lawyers. Right now, we're working on a program involving lawyers who are very experienced in money laundering and financial crimes, and Our menu appeals to lawyers from the solo practicing lawyer to the small firm, mid-sized firm, and then, of course, a real pillar of support for the organization are the thousands of lawyers in the top 10, 20 law firms in the world, referred to within the business as Big Law, and we have large numbers of lawyers in Big Law who donate their time, energy, and efforts to our projects.
And sometimes their firms help out as well.
Well, almost all the time, their firm is supporting their work for us. So, in other words, it's part of their workday, part of their hourly billings that they're allowed to also engage in pro bono work. So it's very much a part of the firm culture.
And so the money laundering product you described, what will your representative be doing to help a country understand money laundering?
So, that's one of the few topics that's very much outside my own wheelhouse. So the lawyers involved with us are taking the lead. But our goal is to start with an introduction to money laundering, to teach young lawyers, mostly young junior prosecutors, how to investigate and prosecute a money laundering case. And once we have that under our belt, we'll develop an advanced curriculum on money laundering for the more seasoned senior prosecutors and or for those working on bigger cases.
And what other areas are you helping to develop a curriculum and train lawyers or judges abroad?
Well, we train the full, I call it the justice sector support, but the full array of what we call stakeholders in the justice sector, which goes from wildlife officers, police officers, law enforcement in general, border officers on things like human trafficking and wildlife crime, to prosecutors, as well as public defenders, junior and senior prosecutors, and then magistrates, judges, and appellate judges. So basically anybody whose day touches the justice sector, from law enforcement through the different lawyers and the courts and judges, has been a beneficiary of our programming.
And how long are the stints usually for?
We're recognizing lately the differences. Things have changed over the last 15 years, and for a lawyer to take 5 to 10 days out of the office is quite challenging, although there are those that do it, and many firms have recognized the importance of it. But we now have programs that run, I would say the shortest program we have abroad is 2 days, but given the cost of traveling abroad, we almost think it's not worth the expense of getting there to only offer a 2-day program. So our average program runs either a 3-day program, a 4, or a 5-day program.
And you help arrange all the logistics and support and housing for the participant?
That depends. Sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't. There are some programs where we take charge of all the logistics, and there are some programs where we provide them with the date they must arrive and the date they can depart, and we leave it to them to do their logistics. Typically, however, we will arrange, for example, discounted hotel rates at the facility for the lawyers, and some of their meals while they're in country. But it very much depends upon the program, the level of independence in terms of making the arrangements. And
you're going to arrange a mission for them when they go over and contact people for them to work with?
Oh, the program is entirely structured. So from before they leave, to preparing them, creating manuals and materials for them to study up, because they have to know what they're doing when they get there. It'll start. The average program starts 6 months before departure, with a lot of preparation. Oftentimes, the lawyers are themselves involved in creating the training content, and then join us in country, which is a beautiful thing that's been happening more recently than not, where we get the law firms agreeing to have the lawyers who actually work on developing training content and then go to the training and deliver it. But it's a very, very structured program. We do not have a lawyer hop on a plane and go to a country with no idea what's going to happen when they get there.
And is there any preliminary work that's done through video conferencing or Skype or follow-up work?
Not so much. We have a portal, a learning portal. Actually, it's at a place called Thinkific, where we create videos for our lawyers to have the opportunity to review videos of what to expect in country, or to understand the facility and the training site that we'll be taking them to, so they have some idea of what to expect when they get there. But and once in a while, depending upon how involved the lawyers are in the program, if a particular law firm is literally creating all the content for a single program, we will sometimes have that law firm have several meetings with the law firm using Skype or video link in the run up to the program. But more often than not, we set aside the whole day, one day before the training program, which is a full briefing day for our trainers, and they are literally in class with us for the day on Sunday, all day before they start training on Monday.
And what are the usual concerns or goals that participants have as they, decide to get involved with your work?
So I think the goal is they want to feel better. I think they want to feel like they're a part of the world. I think a lot of them want to feel like they're that they're relevant, that they're working on hot areas, and when I say hot, I mean troubled, challenging areas, on troubled and challenging issues of law, whether it's a human rights issue or helping victims of human trafficking, or some of them care tremendously about wildlife and environmental issues. So I think we give them an opportunity to take their skills and to be useful and provide benefit on a topic or issue that is of interest to them.
And do they, let's say, is it a one-shot program, or that they go back and check on progress, or check through the internet or other forms of communication?
So we are very much, they are part of usually a 1, 2, or a 3-year program under some type of a grant from a funder that is very structured and monitored by Lawyers Without Borders. The law firms have recently begun to allow us to have people go back. So we've actually created in the issue on the subject of wildlife crime, we actually have a team of about 7 or 8 lawyers from around the world who have been to Africa with us 2 or 3 times, and we consider them a high-level expert team. And the firms, I appreciate the fact that the firms, in the early days, the firms wanted to give as many opportunities to as many lawyers as they could, but we impressed upon them that there was a value in people repeat visits by the same person, so that we could elevate their level of understanding and their ability to deliver more advanced programming. And the law firms went along with it with us. And so now we actually do have some lawyers who have been there many times, and who, when we need a very high-level training, we will tap into those lawyers to go back again.
And do you sometimes add a junior lawyer to the return trip so they can, learn from their colleague?
It's kind of funny that you should say that. We had a training just not too long ago where the junior lawyer went back to her firm and said, I want to change. I want to become a trial lawyer. I was so inspired by this American judge that I second chaired and worked with in Africa. So we never really thought much about the benefit of the junior lawyers working with the senior lawyers, but it occurred to us that unwittingly there's another level of education and enlightenment going on, and that's when we combine these junior lawyers. Admittedly, there's not as much opportunity for them to return multiple times, partly because they don't offer the level of expertise the partners do. And I think because the firm wants to try to give as many young lawyers as they can this experience. So I would say that less frequently the junior lawyers get to repeat in a short amount of time. But with that said, we've been around long enough that I can't even tell you how many junior lawyers are now partners in these firms.
Okay, we have to take a short break now, but I want to remind our listeners you're listening to Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and over the internet at nccradio.org. This is your host, Ken Landau, and my guest today is Christina Storm, and we're talking about Lawyers Without Borders, and we'll be back in a moment.
This portion of programming on WHPC is brought to you on behalf of the Nassau County Bar Association, helping both the public and lawyers since 1899. They are the largest suburban bar association in the country. The Nassau County Bar Association offers clinics where you can meet privately with an attorney to prevent or solve legal problems involving Hurricane Sandy, foreclosure, wills, or elder law. Speakers on almost any legal topic are also available to schools or community groups. They can also help lawyers advance their legal careers and offer a place to network. Learn more about the Nassau County Bar Association by calling 516-747-4070 or visit nassaubar.org.
Once again, we continue with Law You Should Know. From the Mineola Law Firm of Shane, Dox, Denise, Corker, and Sauer, here is attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and we're talking with Christina Storm. She is the director of Lawyers Without Borders and has described the many opportunities for lawyers to do interesting things in interesting places outside the United States. Christina, you mentioned many law firms have their associates and partners participate in your good work and help to fund it as well. Does this become a marketing point for the law firms when they're trying to attract and recruit young lawyers? Christina?
Of recruitment and retention.
Yes.
You know, when young lawyers feel like they can add a little something to their day that's meaningful and resonates with them on a more personal level, it makes them happy and happy with their job. And I think the law firms recognize this and that's certainly part of the reason why they support this kind of pro bono work for their young lawyers.
And what are the projects that you're looking to get involved with in the future?
Right now, we have 3 or 4 major areas of programming going on. Certainly, wildlife crime. Combating wildlife crime is a dominant subject for us at the present in Africa. We are working on human trafficking in several different locales: Asia, South America, the Caribbean, and in Africa. And we're working on counterterrorism programming, training prosecutors to try terrorism cases, both prior to a terrorist event and in the aftermath of a terrorist event. Those are our 3. And child labor. We're doing a fair amount of work on fair labor standards and child labor. And you're trying to help other governments to make their lawyers more detailed concerning all these areas, and then to look for and investigate violations and bring those people to justice. That's certainly part of it. The other part of the way we help governments are legislative work, which is basically helping them develop and adopt laws that embody best practices and international best standards and UN standards and conventions. That's a piece of our work, but a large part of our work very much is bringing justice, creating access to justice, fair access to justice for the citizens of a given country, and making sure that justice is meted out and the integrity of justice is being minded by those whose jobs it is to administer it. And in terms of wildlife crimes, what types of wildlife crimes are there? Well, the one that we deal with the most are poaching crimes and criminal syndicates. So in Africa, animals ranging from elephants, lions, pangolins are some highly endangered species that are whose populations are being decimated by poaching. So we deal with working with wildlife officers in the field on investigative techniques. We deal with how to prosecute the common poacher, but beyond that, we've delved quite a bit into criminal syndicates, the sort of the bigger actors in the criminal enterprises that are in charge and running syndicates and rings that are involved in poaching and trafficking in wildlife parts. And your programs operate in conjunction with any of those by the American Bar Association or the UN or other nonprofits? We don't work at all anymore with the American Bar Association. We've just finished a program funded by the UN on gender violence in Namibia. That was our first program, actually, at their request, first training program that we've done. But largely our work is funded by private donors and U.S. government sources, where we respond to requests for what's called funding opportunities, and we bid them publicly and compete for bid awards that take us into these countries, usually for 2 to 3 years at a time. Is there more details about funding opportunities and also opportunities for attorneys to get involved or encourage their firms to get involved on your website? Not so much. We don't pay too much attention to our website because, it's kind of a bespoke operation that we have. So that we want to make sure that we're very inclusive. So by and large, instead of creating a framework where we say to a law firm, this is what you do, this is what we'll do for you, this is what we request that you donate to us, we pretty much handle every firm's interest in Lawyers Without Borders as an individual one. And we sit down with the firm and we find out what they're looking for, what the level of support is that they might be able to offer Lawyers Without Without Borders and what it is that we might be able to bring to them to enrich the opportunities for their lawyers. So we handle every case on a case-by-case basis. And it's a tedious, difficult, complex process, but I have found it's the best one to work. It creates the best experience for the law firm, for the lawyer, and most rewarding for Lawyers Without Borders to handle each request that comes in. So there's no request that we wouldn't consider. Let's put it that way. And
how can lawyers or law firms get in touch with you or find out more about your organization?
Well, they should go to initiate it with a contact at the website, lwob.org or lawyerswithoutborders.org, and use our contact sheet to reach out to us. Very likely I will be the person responding, and we'll have a phone conversation, usually followed up with 1 or 2 meetings, perhaps a presentation to the firm to gauge interest by the lawyers, and it's a process that takes time. We take it one step at a time because the commitment to Lawyers Without Borders, we hope, is going to be meaningful on both sides of the equation in terms of the support the law firms give us and in terms of the opportunities that we create for their lawyers. So it isn't something that happens overnight. Of course, we are always happy to take a check in the mail. There are some firms that just read about what we do and are kind enough to send us a check in support of what we do, and that's always an option.
And they may not have to endow an entire project, or they may not have a lawyer to send, but they or the general public are welcome to help fund your cause.
They can sit in we can talk to them about having a lawyer sit at his desk and help us create a training manual, to having a lawyer go abroad with us, to there are a couple of firms that just write us a check. There's a lot of work to be done in this sector, and if a law firm is interested and willing, we can find some job for them, whether it's small or large. And at the same time, they don't have to do any of that. Of course, as with any nonprofit, if what we do resonates with the legal profession, we are happy to have them support it. We run a very lean and mean shop. We have 2 offices, one in Washington that's donated by a law firm, and one in Connecticut that is that the organization underwrites on its own, and a donated space in London. So where we can, we get pro bono support any way we can, and we pretty much put those dollars to very good use.
I just want to remind our listeners that you're listening to Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and also over the internet at nccradio.org, and a podcast of this program is available there. This is your host, Ken Landau, and we're talking with Christina Storm about Lawyers Without Borders. You mentioned an office in London. Do British lawyers or barristers get involved in your programs as well?
Oh, my gosh. They almost represent about 50% or more of the involvement. We haven't ever quite been able to put our finger on why, except that the charitable giving awareness in UK seems to be a little stronger than it is here in the USA. Although the concept of pro bono in a structured law firm environment was certainly, America was the leader on that front. But I would say yes. I travel to London several times a year. We manage these lawyers who work with us. I will be meeting with 2 or 3 teams of lawyers in September, going over their work and guiding them and taking what they're doing to its completion. They're very involved. They love what they do, and we like the involvement of the UK lawyers, especially with our work in Africa, because the cost and the time commitment to go to West Africa is half of what it is from America. So there's a great cost savings to them as well as to our programming when we deal with the UK lawyers on the programming in Africa.
And occasionally you have jobs available within your organization. Just tell us about that and how someone can find out more information about that.
Well, we have so our programs tend to have. We have an executive director, and I think I might have mentioned to you in passing that I am scheduled to retire from Lawyers Without Borders in the next few months. So we currently have a job opening for executive director at LWOB, and our job board at our website often has junior positions, program assistants, program managers, and fellows. Right now, I think there's a position available for a program assistant and a fellow, and the fellow is pretty much the entry level job at Lawyers Lawyers Without Borders, it's usually a college graduate or a law school graduate with no working experience, but they're very valuable. They're very important to our programming. And if someone wanted to donate, we actually have one or two law firms that donate and underwrite these endowed fellowships, which is basically an endowment of $20,000 to $40,000, which employs a young college graduate for a full year at Lawyers Without Borders. And that's possibly one of the most generous gifts that we've ever received, and the most useful, because our work is pretty labor-intensive, and it requires a fair amount of manpower. So we do have a fellowship opportunity right now on our human trafficking program for a grant that was just renewed for 2 years that we are currently interviewing for.
And that is a great looks great in your resume when you continue your education, either professionally or going to law school.
I have to tell you, almost every intern we've had has a tremendous track record for success when they leave us. It's wonderful to see. As I mentioned, we've had people that started with us as interns who are now on the verge of becoming partners at major law firms around the world, which is it makes me realize just quite how old I've gotten. But most of the young people who come to us are very committed, and the trajectory that they follow after they leave us is pretty impressive.
So we have a minute left, so I'd like to give you that minute just to summarize everything you've told us about Lawyers Without Borders.
Well, I've been with Lawyers Without Borders for 20 years. I'm very proud of what we've accomplished. I'm about ready to step down and to pass the torch, hopefully for bigger and better things to come. But I'm very grateful for the community at large. Lawyers Without Borders is an organization that was supported by mostly the American legal community, and they've helped us get to where we are right now. I would like to leave Lawyers Without Borders with not only a strong legacy behind me, but every bit of confidence for its future. And to the extent there are people listening to this program who share the vision with me and want to help me make sure that what we've started continues and progresses, please feel free to donate Lawyers Without Borders as I try to create a foundational legacy going forward in my absence that creates a foundation for it to continue to grow.
And especially for someone who shares your concern in those areas of the law around the world. And just give us your contact information one more time.
So at the Lawyers Without Borders website, there's a contact form. I think it's query, Query, at lwob.org. And if an email goes to that query email address, it will find its way into the hands of all the people who are the decision makers, and we'll be happy to respond to anybody's question or interest in supporting Lawyers Without Borders, either through service or through donations.
And you've certainly told us about lots of opportunities for lawyers, for law firms, and the public at large to help or to participate in your organization one way or another. I'd like to thank Christina Storm of Lawyers Without Borders for being our guest on Law You Should Know. If you've missed any part of this program, you can listen to the podcast at nccradio.org. And please join us again next week at this same time on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, for Law You Should Know.